The sheriff's men surround the ranch at dawn, rifles gleaming. Jesse stands between the Maddox twins, heart pounding as accusations of corruption and unnatural conduct echo across the yard. One wrong word could destroy everything they've built. One brave choice could change their lives forever. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you're watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. The summer heat pressed down on Broken Creek Ranch like a hand around the throat. Dust hung in the air, thick enough to taste, and the sun bleached everything it touched until the world looked like old bone. Jesse Caldwell had been working the stables for 3 months now, mucking stalls and hauling feed, keeping his head down and his words few. At 19, he was slight-built, lean from hunger more than work, with dark hair that fell into eyes the color of storm clouds. He had come west running from something, though he never said what. And the Maddox brothers never asked. The twins had a reputation that traveled 3 counties wide. Colt and Ryder Maddox stood 6'3" each, broad-shouldered and hard-muscled from years of breaking horses and building an empire from dust and grit. They were identical in every way that mattered, dark-haired, square-jawed, with eyes like winter sky, cold and piercing. But anyone who spent time around them learned to tell the difference. Colt was the elder by 7 minutes, quieter, watchful, with a stillness that made men nervous. Ryder burned hotter, quicker to smile, quicker to anger, his presence filling a room like smoke. They ran the ranch with iron fists and fair wages, demanding loyalty but giving it back tenfold. Men respected them, women wanted them, and Jesse Caldwell, who had spent his whole life invisible, suddenly found himself seen in ways that made his breath catch and his hands shake. It started simple enough. Small things. Colt lingering in the stable doorway, watching Jesse work without saying a word, his gaze heavy as a brand. Ryder appearing at Jesse's elbow with cold water on the hottest days, his fingers brushing Jesse's when he handed over the canteen, touch lasting just a heartbeat too long. The way both of them seemed to know exactly where Jesse was at any given moment, like they were tracking him without trying. Jesse told himself it meant nothing. Ranch owners checked on their hands. That was all. But the weight of their attention pressed on him constant and unrelenting. And at night, in his narrow bunk in the stable loft, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, heart racing from thoughts he had no right to think. The day everything shifted started like any other. Dawn came pale and uncertain, the heat already building before the sun fully rose. Jesse was in the back stall, brushing down the bay mare they called Temperance, when he heard boots on the stable floor. Heavy, deliberate, 2 sets. His hands stilled on the brush. His pulse kicked up without permission. They appeared in the stall doorway together, blocking the light. Twin shadows that made the space feel suddenly smaller. Colt stood with his arms crossed, hat pulled low. Ryder leaned against the frame, thumbs hooked in his belt, head tilted slightly like he was studying something curious. "Jesse," Colt said, his voice low and rough as creek stones. "Need a word." Jesse's throat went dry. He set down the brush with hands that wanted to tremble and turned to face them, keeping his eyes somewhere around their chests because meeting their gaze felt dangerous. "Yes, sir," he managed. Ryder pushed off the doorframe and stepped into the stall. The space that had felt small before now felt suffocating. Jesse could smell leather and sweat and something else, something that made his head swim. "You been avoiding us, boy?" Ryder asked, and there was something in his tone that made Jesse's skin prickle. "No, sir, just doing my work. That right?" Colt moved now, closing in from the other side until Jesse was caught between them, backed against the stable wall with nowhere to go. Not threatening, not quite, but intentional. Because it seems to me like every time we get close, you find somewhere else to be. Jesse's breath came shallow. He pressed his spine against the rough wood, hands flat at his sides. "I don't mean any disrespect." "Disrespect," Ryder repeated, and he moved closer still, near enough that Jesse could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the dark stubble on his jaw. "That what you think this is about?" "I don't know what this is about," Jesse said, and his voice came out smaller than he meant it to. The twins exchanged a look, something passing between them that Jesse couldn't read. Then Colt reached out slow and deliberate, and his calloused fingers caught Jesse's chin, tilting his face up until their eyes met. The touch burned. Jesse stopped breathing. "You're a skittish thing," Colt said quietly, like a half-broke colt. "All that fear just under the surface." We don't want you afraid of us, Ryder added, his voice dropping lower, intimate in a way that made Jesse's knees weak. That ain't what we want at all. Jesse swallowed hard, his pulse thundering in his ears. Then what do you want? The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications Jesse barely understood. Colt's thumb brushed across his jaw, a touch so gentle it felt like a question in itself. Ryder stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, surrounding. That's what we're trying to figure out, Colt said finally, and there was something in his eyes, hunger mixed with restraint, that made Jesse feel like he was standing on the edge of a cliff. See, we got a problem, Ryder said, his breath ghosting across Jesse's cheek. We can't stop thinking about you, can't stop watching, and we need to know if we're reading this wrong, or if maybe you feel it too. Jesse's heart hammered so hard he thought they must be able to hear it. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to deny, to protect himself from whatever this was. But trapped between their bodies, caught in the heat of their attention, he found he couldn't move, couldn't lie. I feel it, he whispered, the admission torn from somewhere deep inside. I don't know what it is, but I feel it. Ryder's eyes flashed, something triumphant and fierce. Colt's grip on his chin tightened just slightly, grounding, possessive. Good, Colt said, his voice rough as gravel. Because we're done pretending this ain't happening. They pulled back then, giving him space to breathe, but the air between them still crackled with electricity. Jesse slumped against the wall, his legs shaken, his mind reeling. Ryder tipped his hat, that familiar crooked smile playing at his lips. Finish up with the mare, Jesse, then come up to the house. We need to have ourselves a longer conversation about how things are going to work around here. They left him there, trembling and confused and terrified and alive in ways he had never felt before. Through the stable door, he watched them walk side by side toward the main house, their shadows long in the morning sun. Jesse pressed his palm against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath his ribs. He had come west running from who he was, trying to bury the parts of himself that the world said were wrong. But the Maddox brothers had looked at him like they could see straight through every wall he had ever built, and the most terrifying part was that he wanted them to. The mare nickered softly, breaking his trance. Jesse picked up the brush with shaking hands and tried to steady his breathing. In a few hours, he would walk up to that house. He would face whatever this was between them. And somehow, he knew that nothing would ever be the same. Thank you for being here. If this story of courage and forbidden longing in the harsh western frontier has stirred something in your heart, subscribe to my channel so that every day we can sit together again, and I will tell you another story from the Wild West. The sun climbed higher as Jesse finished his work in the stables, but he barely noticed the heat. His mind kept circling back to the weight of their hands, the intensity in their eyes, the question that had been asked without words. He moved through his tasks mechanical, muscle memory taken over while his thoughts raced. 3 months he had been here. 3 months of pretending not to notice when Colt stood too close, his presence solid and commanding. 3 months of averting his eyes when Ryder smiled at him. That slow curl of lips that made something twist low in Jesse's gut. He had thought he was being careful, keeping his face neutral, his distance appropriate, but they had seen through him anyway. The main house loomed larger than usual as Jesse approached it that afternoon. His shirt stuck to his back with sweat that had nothing to do with the temperature. He paused at the bottom of the porch steps, his hand gripping the railing, gathering courage. The door opened before he could knock. Ryder stood there, shirt sleeves rolled up, suspenders hanging at his hips, looking at Jesse with an expression that was equal parts patient and predatory. Was wondering if you'd lost your nerve, Ryder said, but his tone was gentle. He stepped aside. Come on in. The interior was dim after the bright sunlight, Jesse's eyes needing a moment to adjust. The house was well kept, masculine but not sparse, comfortable in the way of men who had built something worth keeping. Colt sat at the dining table, 2 glasses and a bottle of whiskey in front of him. He looked up as Jesse entered, his gaze steady and assessing. Sit, Colt said, nodding to the chair across from him. Jesse sat. His hands lay flat on the table, trying not to fidget. Ryder moved behind him, and Jesse felt his presence there like heat from a fire, close enough to be felt but not touching. Colt poured whiskey into one of the glasses and pushed it across the table. Drink. You look like you need it. Jesse took the glass with both hands to keep them steady and swallowed the liquor in one gulp. It burned going down, but it helped, loosening the knot in his chest just enough to breathe. "We're not going to hurt you," Ryder said from behind him, his voice quiet. "Want you to know that right off." "Okay," Jesse managed. Colt leaned back in his chair, studying Jesse with those winter blue eyes. "Tell us about yourself, Jesse Caldwell. The real story. Why a boy barely grown ends up in Broken Creek with nothing but the clothes on his back and fear in his eyes." Jesse's jaw clenched. He stared at the empty glass. "I don't see how that matters." "It matters because we want to know," Ryder said. His hand came to rest on Jesse's shoulder, heavy and warm, and Jesse fought the urge to lean into that touch. "And because if this is going to work, we need the truth between us." "If what's going to work?" Jesse asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "This," Colt said simply. "What's building between the three of us? Don't pretend you don't feel it." Jesse closed his eyes. The truth sat bitter on his tongue. The words he had never spoken aloud. The shame he had carried like stones in his pockets. "My father found letters," he said finally, voice rough. "Letters I'd written to another boy back home. Letters I'd been stupid enough to keep hidden under my bed." He opened his eyes, staring at the table. "He said I was an abomination. Said he'd rather have a dead son than one like me. So I ran. Took what I could carry and rode west until my horse gave out and I had nothing left but my feet." The silence that followed felt endless. Jesse waited for the judgment, for the disgust, for them to tell him to get out and never come back. Instead, Ryder's hand tightened on his shoulder, grounding rather than restricting. "Your father's a fool," Ryder said quietly. Colt reached across the table, his fingers covering Jesse's. The touch was deliberate, unmistakable. "Out here, Jesse, man's worth is measured by his work and his word, not by who he wants in his bed." Jesse's breath hitched. He stared at Colt's hand on his, rough and scarred and undeniably real. "We've known what we are since we were young," Colt continued, "known that the world wouldn't understand it. Out here, we built something where we make the rules." His thumb brushed across Jesse's knuckles. "And the rule is simple. What happens on this ranch between consenting souls ain't nobody's business but ours. We saw you the day you arrived," Ryder said, his voice close to Jesse's ear now, sending shivers down his spine. "Skinny kid covered in dust, eyes full of ghosts. And we both knew, recognized something in you that we see in each other." Jesse's hands trembled under Colt's grip. "I don't understand what you're asking me." "We're asking," Colt said, his voice dropping lower, intimate and commanding at once, "if you want to stay, not just as a stable hand, but as something more, with us, both of us." The words hung in the air, impossible and terrifying, and everything Jesse had never let himself imagine. His mind reeled. He thought of every warning he had ever heard, every condemnation, every reason this was wrong. But he also thought of the way they looked at him, the way their presence made him feel seen for the first time in his life, the way standing between them in that stable this morning had felt like coming home to a place he had never been. "People would talk," Jesse whispered. "Let them talk in town," Ryder said. "They don't come out here, and our men know better than to question how we run our business." "I don't know how this works," Jesse admitted. I don't have experience with anything like this." "We know," Colt said gently. "We can see it in every move you make, the way you startle when we get close, the way you watch us when you think we're not looking." He stood then, moving around the table until he was beside Jesse, looking down at him with an intensity that stole breath. "We're not asking you to know. We're asking you to trust." Jesse looked up at him, then turned to look at Ryder, who had moved to lean against the wall nearby, arms crossed but expression open, patient. They were giving him space to choose, not pressuring, just waiting. "If I stay," Jesse said slowly, "if I say yes to whatever this is, what does that mean? What are you asking of me?" The twins exchanged another one of those looks, communication passing between them in a language Jesse didn't yet speak. "It means you're ours," Ryder said simply, "and we're yours. It means we take care of you, protect you, provide for you, and it means when the door closes at night, what happens between us is sacred. Just us. No shame, no judgment, just truth. It means, Colt added, his hand coming to rest on the back of Jesse's neck, warm and possessive, that you don't run anymore. You stand, with us, no matter what comes. Jesse's throat tightened. He had spent so long running, so long, hiding, that the idea of standing still felt foreign and frightening, but beneath the fear was something else, a hunger he had tried to starve, a need he had tried to deny. I'm scared, he admitted. Good, Colt said. Fear keeps you sharp, but don't let it rule you. We'll go slow, Ryder promised. This doesn't have to be anything you're not ready for. But Jesse, you need to make a choice. Are you staying? Not just tonight, but for real. Because if you are, we need to hear you say it. Jesse stood on shaking legs, caught between them again, but this time by choice. He looked at Colt, then at Ryder, seeing in their faces something he had never expected to find in this harsh, unforgiving land. Acceptance, desire, protection, home. I'm staying, he said, his voice stronger than he felt. I want to stay, with both of you, whatever that means. Ryder's smile was slow and satisfied. Colt's hand tightened on his neck, pulling him closer until their foreheads almost touched. Then, welcome home, Jesse Caldwell, Colt said quietly. This is where your running ends. And as the sun set over Broken Creek Ranch, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, Jesse Caldwell finally stopped running and let himself be caught. That first night, they gave him space. Colt walked him back to the stable as dusk settled over the land, his hand resting light on Jesse's lower back, a touch that felt both casual and significant. The other ranch hands were finishing their suppers, their laughter carrying across the yard, oblivious to how Jesse's entire world had just shifted on its axis. You'll move your things up to the house tomorrow, Colt said as they reached the stable door. Tonight, get some rest, process what happened today. But Jesse, his fingers caught Jesse's wrist, stopping him. This ain't a dream you're going to wake up from. This is real. We're real. Jesse nodded, not trusting his voice. Colt studied him for a long moment, then did something unexpected. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind Jesse's ear, the gesture so tender it made Jesse's chest ache. Sleep well, Colt said quietly, then turned and walked back toward the house, his silhouette dark against the fading light. Jesse climbed to his bunk in the loft, his body exhausted but his mind racing too fast for sleep. He lay on his back, staring at the rough beams overhead, trying to make sense of everything. The Maddox brothers wanted him, not as a worker but as something more, something he had never dared to hope for, never let himself imagine possible. His fingers traced over his wrist where Colt had touched him, the skin still warm from contact. He thought about Ryder's hand on his shoulder, solid and grounding. The way they had looked at him, not with the disgust his father had shown, but with desire and something deeper. Respect, maybe. Recognition. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams he couldn't quite remember when morning arrived. The next day felt different. Jesse went, about his morning chores with a strange awareness thrumming through his veins. Every time he heard boots on the stable floor, his pulse jumped. When Ryder appeared mid-morning with a canteen of cold water, Jesse took it with trembling hands. You okay? Ryder asked, leaning against the stall door, his eyes searching Jesse's face. Just tired, Jesse lied. Ryder's expression said he didn't believe it, but he didn't push. Instead, he reached out and brushed his thumb across the hollow beneath Jesse's eye, where dark circles spoke of sleepless nights. You're thinking too much. That mind of yours is working overtime. I don't know how to do this, Jesse admitted quietly. I don't know what you want from me. Ryder's smile was gentle. We want you to be yourself, that's all. No pretending, no hiding. He paused, his hand dropping to Jesse's shoulder. And Jesse, we meant what we said yesterday. We'll go at your pace. There's no rush. What if I'm not ready for what you're asking? Then we wait, Ryder said simply. We're patient men when it matters. His hand squeezed Jesse's shoulder once before releasing. Finish up here. Colt wants you at the house for lunch. We're going to start teaching you the business side of running this place. Why? Jesse asked, confused. Because, Ryder said, pushing off the door frame, if you're going to be part of this, you need to understand all of it. Not just mucking stalls, but ledgers and stock prices and how we keep this operation running. His eyes held Jesse's. Partners share everything, Jesse. The work, the profits, the decisions, all of it. He left before Jesse could respond, but the word echoed in Jesse's head. Partners, not servants, not workers, partners. Lunch was simple but good, bread and cold meat and fresh vegetables from the kitchen garden. Jesse sat at the table with the twins, feeling awkward and out of place in the formal dining room. But they drew him into easy conversation, asking about his morning, explaining their plans for expanding the horse breeding operation. "Can you read?" Colt asked suddenly. Jesse nodded. "My mother taught me before she died." "Good," Colt said, and pushed a leather-bound ledger across the table. "These are the ranch accounts. I want you to look them over. Get familiar with how we track expenses and income. If you have questions, ask." Jesse stared at the book like it might bite him. "You're serious about this? About making me a partner?" "Dead serious," Ryder said. "We don't do things halfway, Jesse. When we commit fully." His eyes locked on Jesse's, intense and unwavering. "Question is, are you ready to do the same?" Jesse's hands shook as he pulled the ledger toward him. "I'll try. That's all we ask," Colt said. The afternoon passed in a strange blur. Jesse sat in the ranch office, slowly working through the ledger entries, while Colt worked on correspondence and Ryder came in and out, dealing with the hands and various ranch business. It felt domestic in a way that both comforted and terrified Jesse, like he was building something real, something lasting. As evening approached, Ryder appeared in the doorway. "Come on," he said. "Want to show you something?" Jesse followed him outside, past the corrals and up a small rise behind the main house. At the top, Ryder stopped and gestured to the view. The ranch spread out before them, land rolling away in all directions, painted gold and purple in the setting sun. "This is what we built," Ryder said quietly. "Me and Colt, we started with nothing but grit and a dream. Every fence post, every building, every head of cattle, we earned it." His voice dropped lower. "And now we want to share it with you." Jesse's throat tightened. "Why me? I'm nobody. I'm just a kid running from his past." Ryder turned to face him fully, his expression serious. "You're not nobody, Jesse. You're brave enough to run towards something better instead of giving up. You're strong enough to survive when you had every reason to quit, and you're honest enough to admit when you're scared." His hand came up, cupping Jesse's face with surprising gentleness. "Those aren't the qualities of nobody. Those are the qualities of someone worth keeping." Jesse felt tears prick his eyes, emotion overwhelming him. Nobody had ever talked to him like this before, like he mattered, like he was valuable just for being himself. "I don't know how to be what you need," Jesse whispered. "You already are," Ryder said. "You just don't see it yet." They stood there as the sun sank lower, Ryder's hand warm against Jesse's cheek, the wind carrying the scent of sage and dust. In that moment, Jesse felt something shift inside him. Not the death of his old self, but the birth of something new. Something that didn't have to hide or apologize or run. When they returned to the house, Colt was waiting on the porch, 2 cups of coffee in hand. He passed one to Jesse without a word, and the 3 of them sat together, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. "Tomorrow," Colt said eventually, "we'll move your things to the house. You'll take the room at the end of the hall. It's got its own door to the outside, in case you need space." Jesse sipped his coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground him. "And after that," Ryder said, "we keep building, together." Jesse looked at them, these 2 men who had taken him in, who saw past all his fear and shame to something worth protecting. He thought about his father's words, the condemnation and rejection. Then he looked at the ranch spread out before them, solid and real, built by hands that now offered him partnership instead of judgment. "Okay," Jesse said quietly, "let's build." Colt's hand found his in the darkness, rough fingers intertwining with his own. On his other side, Ryder shifted closer, his shoulder pressing against Jesse's, solid and warm. And for the first time since he had fled his father's house, Jesse Caldwell felt something he had thought lost forever. He felt safe. He felt wanted. He felt home. The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and indifferent to human struggles, while below them, 3 souls sat together, building something new from the ashes of what they had each left behind. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own fears. But tonight, in the darkness, with their hands joined and their futures uncertain but shared, it was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. The days began to blur together in the best way possible. Jesse woke each morning to the sound of roosters and the distant lowing of cattle, but now he woke knowing he had purpose beyond mere survival. He dressed quickly, splashing water on his face from the basin in his room, and made his way downstairs where Colt was usually already up, starting coffee on the big iron stove. "Morning," Colt would say, his voice still rough with sleep, and Jesse would return the greeting, feeling a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the heat from the stove. They moved around each other with growing familiarity, Jesse setting out cups while Colt sliced bread, a domestic dance that felt both foreign and utterly right. Ryder would appear eventually, hair tousled, eyes still half closed, complaining good-naturedly about early mornings. He would ruffle Jesse's hair in passing, his hand lingering just a moment at the back of Jesse's neck, a casual touch that sent shivers down Jesse's spine every time. They ate together, planning the day's work, and Jesse found his voice more with each passing morning. He offered suggestions about which pastures needed rotation, pointed out repairs he had noticed, asked questions about breeding lines and market prices, and they listened, really listened, considering his words, implementing his ideas. It was intoxicating, being heard, being valued. One morning, about 2 weeks after moving into the house, Jesse came downstairs to find Colt standing at the kitchen window, staring out at the pre-dawn darkness. Something about his posture was tense, troubled. Jesse hesitated, then moved to stand beside him. "Everything all right?" Colt was quiet for a moment, then spoke without turning. "You ever wonder if you're being selfish, taking what you want without thinking about the cost to others?" Jesse frowned, uncertain where this was coming from. "What do you mean?" Colt finally looked at him, his winter blue eyes troubled. "You're 19, Jesse. Barely more than a boy. Me and Ryder, we're 32. We've lived, made our mistakes, know what we want. But you," his jaw clenched. "What if we're taking advantage? What if in 5 years, 10 years, you look back and realize you gave up too much too young?" The question hung heavy in the air. Jesse thought about it carefully, understanding that Colt needed honesty, not empty reassurance. "I'm not going to lie and say I know exactly what I want for the rest of my life," Jesse said slowly. "I don't have that kind of certainty, but I know what I don't want." He moved closer, his shoulder brushing Colt's. "I don't want to keep running. I don't want to keep hiding who I am. I don't want to be alone anymore, pretending that solitude is the same as safety." He turned to face Colt fully. "You and Ryder, you're not taking advantage of me. You're giving me a chance to build something real. Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But either way, I'd rather risk failure trying to live honestly than succeed at living a lie." Colt's expression softened slightly. "You're wiser than your years suggest." "I've had to grow up fast," Jesse said. "Running from home, surviving on the road. That changes you, makes you see what matters." He reached out tentatively and placed his hand over Colt's where it rested on the windowsill. "What matters is finding people who see you for who you really are and don't turn away. You and Ryder did that for me. So no, I don't think you're being selfish. I think you're being brave enough to take a chance on something the world says is wrong, but we all know is right." Colt's hand turned over, fingers interlacing with Jesse's. His grip was firm, grounding. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I needed to hear that." They stood together in the growing light, and Jesse realized something important. Colt and Ryder weren't infallible. They had doubts too, fears about doing right by him, about whether they were asking too much. That vulnerability made them more real, more human. Not distant authority figures, but men trying to navigate complicated feelings in an unforgiving world. Ryder appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with knowing eyes. "Am I interrupting?" "No," Colt said, releasing Jesse's hand but not stepping away. "Just talking." Ryder moved into the kitchen, starting the coffee routine. His eyes flicked between them, reading the emotional undercurrents. "You two all right?" "We are now," Jesse said, and meant it. After breakfast, Colt pulled out a map of the ranch property, spreading it across the kitchen table. He pointed to the northern section, a large tract of land that bordered the foothills. "This area here, we've been thinking about developing it. There's a natural spring, good grazing, could support another 100 head of cattle, maybe more." He looked at Jesse. "What do you think?" Jesse studied the map, tracing the topography with his finger. He thought about what he had learned over the past weeks, about water rights and grazing rotation and market demands. "You'd need to build a line shack up there," he said, "for whoever's watching the herd during summer months, and you'd need to improve the trail access, make it easier to move stock in and out." Ryder leaned over, impressed. That's exactly what we were thinking. See, Colt, I told you the boy has a head for this. Jesse felt pride bloom in his chest. It's a good plan, but it would take capital for the improvements, for buying more stock. We have the capital, Colt said. The question is whether it's the right time, whether the market will support expansion. They spent the next hour debating strategies, weighing risks and benefits. Jesse found himself fully engaged, his mind working through problems, offering solutions. This was what partnership meant, not just sharing a house or even sharing intimacy, but sharing the work of building something lasting. Later that afternoon, Jesse was in the stable grooming one of the horses when he heard voices outside. He recognized one as Colt's, but the other was unfamiliar. Curious, he moved to the doorway and saw a well-dressed man in a fine suit standing with Colt near the corral, a leather satchel under his arm. "Ah, there he is," Colt said, gesturing Jesse over. "Jesse, this is Mr. Bradford, our attorney. Bradford, this is Jesse Caldwell, my partner." The attorney extended his hand, and Jesse shook it, trying not to show his nervousness. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Caldwell. Mr. Maddox has told me quite a bit about you." "All good, I hope," Jesse said, attempting a smile. "Indeed," Bradford said. He opened his satchel and pulled out several documents. "I've drawn up the partnership papers as requested. Everything is in order, properly notarized." He handed them to Colt, then looked at Jesse. "Mr. Maddox has been quite insistent that your interests be protected. This agreement ensures that you have equal say in ranch operations and equal share in profits. It also includes provisions for, shall we say, unforeseen circumstances." Jesse glanced at Colt, who met his eyes steadily. "I wanted to make sure you're protected," Colt said quietly, "no matter what happens." Bradford cleared his throat. "There's also this." He pulled out another document. "It's a will. Both Mr. Maddox brothers have updated theirs to include provisions for you. In the event of their deaths, the ranch would pass to you jointly or solely, depending on circumstances." Jesse felt like the ground had shifted beneath him. That's too much." "It's necessary," Ryder said, appearing from the barn. "We're not young men anymore, Jesse. Accidents happen, illness happens. We need to know that what we've built won't be taken from you just because some town official decides you don't have rights." Bradford handed the papers to Jesse. "Look them over. If you have questions, I'm available. But I can assure you, everything is legally sound. Your position here is secure." After Bradford left, Jesse sat on the porch steps, papers in hand, trying to process what had just happened. The twins had done more than just welcome him into their home and their lives. They had secured his future, protected him legally in ways he never could have imagined. Colt sat down beside him. "Too much?" Jesse shook his head. His voice caught. "Nobody's ever done anything like this for me. Nobody's ever cared enough to think about my future." "We care," Colt said simply. "More than I think you realize yet." His hand rested on Jesse's knee, warm and solid. "You're not just a passing fancy, Jesse. You're someone we're planning a life with." Ryder settled on Jesse's other side, the three of them watching the sun begin its descent. "That night in the stable, when we first talked to you, I knew," he said. "Knew you were someone special, someone worth keeping." Jesse leaned into Ryder's shoulder, overwhelmed by emotion. "I don't know how to repay this." "You don't repay family," Ryder said gently. "You just love them back." The word hung in the air. Family. Not employers, not even just partners. Family. Jesse felt tears prick his eyes, but for once, they were good tears, healing tears. He had spent so long believing he would never have this again, that his father's rejection had closed that door forever. But here, in this unlikely place, with these unlikely men, he had found it again. Found home, found belonging, found love, even if none of them had spoken that word directly yet. As darkness fell, they moved inside, and Jesse helped Colt prepare supper while Ryder dealt with the last of the evening chores. They moved around the kitchen with practiced ease now, Jesse knowing where everything was kept, anticipating what was needed. It felt like they had been doing this for years rather than weeks. Over dinner, they talked about the northern expansion plans, about which horses were ready for sale, about mundane everyday things that somehow felt significant because they were planning together, building together. Jesse realized this was what he had been searching for without knowing it. Not just acceptance of who he was, but inclusion in something bigger than himself. After the dishes were cleared, Colt pulled out a worn deck of cards. Poker? They played for matchsticks, joking and trash-talking, the evening easy and comfortable. Jesse found himself laughing more than he had in years, Ryder's terrible bluffing and Colt's dry commentary, keeping him entertained. This was life, he realized. Not grand gestures or dramatic moments, but quiet evenings playing cards, sharing space, being together. When they finally called it a night, Jesse climbed the stairs to his room, but paused in the hallway. Colt's door was open, lamplight spilling out. Jesse stood there, uncertain, wanting something but not sure how to ask for it. Colt appeared in the doorway, as if sensing his presence. "Can't sleep." Jesse shook his head. He struggled for words. "I don't want to be alone tonight." Colt's expression softened. "Come on, then." Jesse followed him into the room, nervous but determined. Colt's room was larger than his, with a big bed and solid furniture. Colt gestured to the bed. "Get comfortable. I'm just going to check the doors are locked." Jesse sat on the edge of the bed, his heart racing. When Colt returned, he moved with deliberate slowness, giving Jesse time to change his mind. But Jesse didn't move, didn't run. He wanted this, wanted to be held, to feel safe, to let someone else be strong while he was vulnerable. Colt lay down, and Jesse curled against his side, resting his head on Colt's chest. Strong arms came around him, holding him secure. They lay in silence for a while, Jesse listening to the steady beat of Colt's heart. "Thank you," Jesse whispered finally, "for everything, for seeing me, for protecting me, for giving me a place to belong." Colt's hand stroked his hair, gentle and soothing. "Thank you for trusting us enough to stay, for being brave enough to take this chance." Jesse's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion and emotional overwhelm finally catching up with him. But it was good exhaustion, the kind that came from a full day of meaningful work and genuine connection. He felt Colt press a kiss to the top of his head, tender and protective, and something in Jesse's chest cracked open, letting in light he hadn't known he was blocking. He was home. He was safe. He was loved, even if the word hadn't been spoken yet. And as sleep claimed him, wrapped in Colt's arms, Jesse Caldwell finally allowed himself to believe it might last. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that Jesse had never experienced before. He woke before dawn in his new room, with its clean sheets and solid door, and joined the twins for breakfast. They ate together, planning the day's work, and Jesse found himself speaking more freely, offering opinions that were actually listened to, considered. After breakfast, he worked alongside the ranch hands, but now with the understanding that he was learning to manage, not just to serve. The other men noticed the change, of course. Jesse moving into the main house hadn't gone unnoticed, but the Maddox brothers ran their operation with such authority that no one dared question their decisions. A few sidelong glances, some whispered conversations that stopped when Jesse approached, but nothing direct, nothing dangerous. Still, Jesse felt the weight of those stares. One afternoon, while checking fence lines on the eastern boundary, he found himself working alongside Tom Garrett, one of the older hands who had been with the ranch for years. They worked in silence for a while, replacing rotted posts, the sun beating down relentless. Finally, Tom spoke, his voice gruff but not unkind. "Boy, you know what you're doing." Jesse paused, hammer in hand. "I'm learning fence repair, if that's what you mean." "That ain't what I mean," Tom said, not looking at him. "The Maddox brothers, they're good men, fair employers, better than most, but they're also particular about their privacy." His weathered hands twisted wire around a post. "Whatever arrangement you got with them, just know that some of us have known them a long time, and we're loyal." The warning was clear, though not threatening. Jesse set down his hammer and met Tom's eyes directly. "I'm not here to hurt them, or to cause trouble." Tom studied him for a long moment, then gave a short nod. "All right then. Just wanted you to know where things stand." He went back to work, and after a beat, added, "For what it's worth, I ain't seen Colt smile this much in years. Whatever you're doing, it's working." The words warmed something in Jesse's chest. He picked up his hammer and returned to work, and they didn't speak of it again. That evening, Jesse found Ryder in the barn, treating a mare's injured hoof. He worked with patient efficiency, his hands gentle despite their size and strength. Jesse leaned against the stall door, watching. "Tom Garrett talked to me today," Jesse said. Ryder didn't look up from his work. "What did he say?" Jesse told him, and Ryder's mouth quirked in a small smile. "Tom's been with us since the beginning. He's protective, but he's also discreet." His eyes finally lifted to meet Jesse's. "You worried about the other men knowing?" Jesse considered the question honestly. "A little. Not for me, but for you and Colt. You've built something here. I don't want to ruin it." Ryder straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "Come here." Jesse pushed off the door and stepped into the stall. Ryder reached out and pulled him close, hands settling on Jesse's hips, firm and possessive. "Listen to me. The men who work here know that what happens in our private lives ain't their concern. They also know that Colt and I don't tolerate gossip or disrespect. You're under our protection now. That means something. But what if someone talks? What if word gets to town? Then we deal with it," Ryder said simply. Together, his forehead pressed against Jesse's, and Jesse felt the steady rhythm of his breathing. "We didn't bring you into this blind, Jesse. We knew what we were risking, and we decided you were worth it." Jesse's hands came up to rest on Ryder's chest, feeling the solid warmth of him through his shirt. "I'm still scared sometimes." "Good," Ryder said. "Fear keeps you careful. Just don't let it keep you from living." His hands squeezed Jesse's hips gently. "You belong here now, with us. Stop waiting for someone to take it away." That night, Colt called Jesse into his office after supper. The room was warm, lit by oil lamps, papers spread across the desk. Colt gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. We need to talk business." Jesse sat, curious and slightly nervous. Colt pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. "I've been thinking about the future," Colt said, "about how to make your position here official. This is a partnership agreement. It gives you a share in the ranch, makes you a legal partner in the operation." His eyes were serious. "It also protects you if something happens to me or Ryder. Makes sure you can't be thrown out, that you have rights to stay here." Jesse stared at the paper, his vision blurring slightly. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Colt said firmly. "You're putting your trust in us, Jesse. We need to do the same. This makes it real, legal." He leaned back in his chair. "Read it over. If you have questions, ask. If you want to make changes, we'll negotiate. But I want this settled. I want you to know you're secure here." Jesse picked up the document with shaking hands, scanning the formal language. It was everything Colt had said, a full partnership with equal rights and responsibilities. His name, Jesse Caldwell, written there in black ink alongside Colt and Ryder Maddox. "Why are you doing this?" Jesse asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Colt stood and came around the desk, perching on the edge in front of Jesse. "Because when I look at you, I don't see a temporary arrangement. I see someone I want in my life for the long term." He reached out and tilted Jesse's chin up. "Me and Ryder, we're not playing games. This is real for us. Is it real for you?" Jesse's throat worked, emotion threatening to choke him. "It's real. It's the most real thing I've ever had." "Then sign it," Colt said, offering him a pen. "Make it official." Jesse took the pen, his hand steady despite the tears that threatened. He signed his name carefully, each letter a promise, a commitment. When he finished, Colt took the document and countersigned it, then called for Ryder, who came in from the other room and added his signature as well. "Welcome to the partnership," Ryder said with a grin, pulling Jesse up into a rough embrace. "Now you're stuck with us." That night, Jesse lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. But for once, his mind wasn't racing with fear or doubt. He thought about the document now filed safely away, about Tom Garrett's grudging approval, about Ryder's hands on his hips, and Colt's careful protection. He thought about how far he had come from that desperate boy, fleeing his father's house with nothing but shame and fear. He had found something here in this harsh land. Not just shelter or work, but family, purpose, a place where he could be himself without hiding, without apologizing. The Maddox brothers had given him that, and in return, he would give them his loyalty, his work, and his trust. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Jesse was in the stable when he heard the commotion, raised voices from the yard. He stepped outside to see a group of riders approaching, maybe 8 or 9 men, dust rising from their horses' hooves. At the front rode a man Jesse recognized from town, Sheriff Davies, his star catching the sunlight. Colt and Ryder were already on the porch, arms crossed, waiting. Jesse felt his stomach clench with anxiety, but forced himself to walk over and stand with them. Whatever this was, they would face it together. "Davies," Colt said, his voice neutral, "what brings you out this way?" The sheriff dismounted slowly, his eyes scanning the three of them. "Had some complaints from town. Talk about improper conduct." He spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Thought I'd ride out and see for myself what's going on." "This is private property," Ryder said, his voice hard. "And what happens here ain't subject to town complaints." "The law applies everywhere, Mr. Maddox," Davies said. "Even out here." His gaze slid to Jesse, assessing. "This the boy folks are talking about." Jesse forced himself to stand straight, to not flinch under the scrutiny. "His name's Jesse Caldwell," Colt said. "He's a partner in this operation. Legal and proper." "Partner," Davies repeated, skepticism clear in his tone. "That so?" Colt pulled the partnership document from his vest pocket, unfolding it and holding it out. "All legal, witnessed and filed with the territorial court. You can check if you like." Davies took the paper, scanning it with narrowed eyes. After a long moment, he handed it back. "Seems in order, but that don't address the other concerns." "What concerns?" Ryder asked, danger creeping into his voice. "About the nature of your arrangement," Davies said carefully. "There are laws, Mr. Maddox. Laws about certain types of relations between men." The air went thick with tension. Jesse felt his heart hammering, old fears rising. But Colt just smiled, cold and controlled. "Sheriff, I'm not sure what you think you know, but this is a working ranch. Mr. Caldwell is a business partner. He has his own room, his own responsibilities. Whatever gossip is floating around town ain't based on fact." His eyes hardened. "And unless you have evidence of actual criminal conduct, I suggest you and your men turn around and head back." Davies shifted his weight, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm just doing my job, investigating complaints." "Then investigate properly," Ryder said. "Talk to our men, check our books, look around, but you won't find anything improper because there's nothing to find." He stepped forward, intimidating despite making no threatening gesture. "And Sheriff, if this harassment continues, we'll be filing our own complaints about officials overstepping their authority based on gossip and prejudice." The standoff lasted another tense minute before Davies finally nodded. "All right, I'll let folks know everything seems proper out here. But Maddox, keep things quiet. Don't give people reason to talk. We'll run our ranch however we see fit," Colt said flatly. "Within the law. What people talk about ain't our concern." Davies mounted his horse, his men following suit. They rode off, leaving behind churned dust and a heavy silence. Jesse realized he'd been holding his breath and let it out in a rush. "They know. They suspect," Colt corrected. "But suspicion ain't proof, and without proof, they can't do anything." He turned to Jesse, his expression softening slightly. "You okay?" Jesse nodded shakily. "You stood up to them. For me." "For us," Ryder corrected, coming to stand beside him. "We told you, Jesse. You're ours now. That means we protect what's ours." The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. Jesse worked mechanically, his mind replaying the confrontation. That evening, the three of them sat on the porch again, whiskey in hand, watching the sunset paint the sky. "Is this going to be a problem?" Jesse asked finally. "People talking, making trouble." "Might be," Colt admitted, "but we'll handle it." His hand found Jesse's in the gathering darkness. "We've faced worse than small-town gossip." "The thing is," Ryder added, "people out here mind their own business mostly. Long as we're not flaunting anything in town, long as we keep our private lives private, most folks won't care enough to cause real trouble. And those who do," his voice hardened, "well, they'll learn we're not easy targets." Jesse squeezed Colt's hand, drawing strength from the contact. "I don't want to be something you have to hide." "You're not," Colt said firmly, "but there's a difference between hiding and being smart. We're not ashamed of you, Jesse. Not now, not ever. But we live in a world that doesn't understand, and we have to be careful for all our sakes." Ryder reached over and ruffled Jesse's hair affectionately. "Besides, what we have here, between us, that's sacred, private. Not because it's shameful, but because it's ours. Nobody else's business or concern." Jesse leaned back in his chair, feeling the solid presence of the twins on either side of him. The fear was still there, hovering at the edges, but beneath it was something stronger. Trust, commitment, the knowledge that he wasn't facing the world alone anymore. The stars began emerging, one by one, ancient witnesses to their quiet rebellion. 3 men sitting together, hands joined in the darkness, building a life that defied convention but held more truth than all the proper lies of town society. It wasn't easy. It might never be easy. But it was real, and it was theirs, and that was enough. As summer deepened into its full heat, Jesse settled more fully into his new life. The work was hard but satisfying, his body growing stronger, his confidence building. He learned the business side of ranching from Colt's careful tutelage, learned horse handling from Ryder's patient instruction, and at night, behind closed doors, he learned other things, softer things, about trust and touch and the terrifying vulnerability of being truly known. They moved slowly, respecting his inexperience and his fears. Some nights they just talked, the 3 of them in Colt's room, sharing whiskey and stories. Other nights brought more, careful explorations, building intimacy through gradual steps rather than rushed passion. Every boundary Jesse set was respected, every hesitation met with patience. One night, maybe 6 weeks after that first conversation in the stable, Jesse woke from a nightmare, his father's voice echoing in his ears. Abomination, unnatural, better dead than what you are. He sat up gasping, sweat soaking his nightshirt, the darkness pressing in, suffocating. A knock came at his door, soft but insistent. Jesse, Colt's voice, rough with sleep. "You all right?" Jesse couldn't answer, his throat closed with emotion. The door opened, and Colt entered, barefoot, wearing only trousers. He crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed, his hand finding Jesse's shoulder. "Bad dream?" Jesse nodded, not trusting his voice. "About your father?" Another nod. Colt's arm came around him, pulling him close, and Jesse collapsed, against his chest, shaking with suppressed sobs. "He said I was an abomination," Jesse choked out. "Said I should be dead." Colt's hand stroked his hair, slow and soothing. "He was wrong, and cruel. And you're better off without him. But what if he was right? What if this is wrong? What if we're wrong? What if—" Colt pulled back, his hands framing Jesse's face, forcing eye contact even in the darkness. "Listen to me. There is nothing wrong with you, nothing unnatural about loving who you love. Your father's hatred came from his own fear and ignorance. That's his burden to carry, not yours. But the law," Jesse whispered, "the church, everyone says a lot of things that ain't true," Colt interrupted. "I've seen real evil in this world, Jesse. Men who kill for sport, who hurt the weak for pleasure, who lie and cheat and destroy without conscience. That's evil. What we have here, 3 people caring for each other, protecting each other, building something together. That ain't evil. That's the opposite." Jesse's breath hitched, tears still sliding down his cheeks. "How do you know?" "Because I feel it," Colt said simply. "In my bones, in my gut, in every part of me that knows truth from lies. What I feel when I look at you, when I hold you, when I think about our future together, that's not sin. That's grace." His thumb wiped away Jesse's tears. "Don't let your father's poison take root in your heart. Don't let the world's fear make you doubt what you know is true." Jesse sagged against him, exhausted from emotion. Colt held him, steady and warm, until his breathing evened out. Eventually, Ryder appeared in the doorway, drawn by some intuition. "Room for one more?" he asked softly. Colt nodded, and Ryder climbed onto the bed, settling on Jesse's other side. They held him between them, solid and protective, their presence pushing back the darkness and the cruel voices. "You're safe here," Ryder murmured, "always safe with us." Jesse drifted back to sleep, surrounded by warmth, by acceptance, by the fierce protection of men who saw his worth when he couldn't see it himself. And when morning came, when he woke tangled between them in his narrow bed, sunlight streaming through the window, he felt something new stirring in his chest. Not just safety, not just acceptance, but belonging. Deep, unshakable belonging. They untangled slowly, Ryder groaning about the cramped quarters, Colt stretching out kinks from the small bed. Jesse watched them move around his room with easy familiarity, and he realized with sudden clarity that this was his life now. Not temporary, not conditional. This was home. "Coffee?" Ryder asked, and Jesse nodded, smiling. They went downstairs together, and Jesse helped Colt make breakfast, while Ryder checked on the horses. It was domestic and ordinary and perfect, the kind of quiet morning Jesse had never thought he'd have. No fear, no hiding, just three people starting their day together. After breakfast, Colt pulled out the ranch ledgers. "We need to make a supply run to town next week. Usually me and Ryder go together, but I'm thinking you should come along." He looked up at Jesse. "Time you started showing your face as a partner, not just a worker." Jesse's stomach clenched. "Is that wise, after what happened with the sheriff?" "Can't hide forever," Ryder said, coming back inside. "Besides, the general store needs to see that we're doing business proper. You signing documents, handling money, makes it clear you're legitimate." Jesse thought about it, fear warring with determination. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, I'll go." Colt's approval showed in his eyes. Good man. The following week, they rode into town, Jesse between the twins, trying to project confidence he didn't quite feel. People stared as they hitched their horses outside the general store, whispers following them. But Colt and Ryder moved with such authority, such unconcerned command, that no one dared approach directly. Inside, the store owner, Mr. Patterson, greeted them with professional courtesy. "Mr. Maddox, Mr. Maddox." His eyes slid to Jesse. "And this must be your new partner I've heard about." "Jesse Caldwell," Colt said. "He'll be handling our accounts from now on." They conducted their business efficiently, Jesse signing purchase orders, making notes on needed supplies. He could feel eyes on him, hear the whispers, but he kept his head high and his hands steady. When they finished, Colt counted out payment with deliberate care, making sure everyone saw the transaction was legitimate and proper. As they left, a woman's voice called out, "Shame on you." All three of them turned. An older woman stood on the boardwalk, her face twisted with righteous anger. "Corrupting that boy, taking advantage. It's sinful." "Ma'am," Colt said, his voice cold, "you don't know what you're talking about. I know evil when I see it," she spat. Before Colt could respond, Jesse stepped forward. His heart hammered, but his voice came out steady. "Ma'am, nobody's corrupting anybody. I'm here by choice. I'm a legal partner in a working ranch. Whatever you think you know about my personal life, you're wrong." The woman's face reddened. "Your parents should be ashamed." "My parents are dead," Jesse said flatly. "And the Maddox brothers have shown me more kindness and respect than my own father ever did. So whatever judgment you're passing, save it for someone who cares." He turned and walked to his horse, aware that the entire street had gone silent, watching. Colt and Ryder followed, and they mounted up together. As they rode out of town, Ryder let out a low whistle. "Well, damn, Jesse, didn't know you had that in you." "Neither did I," Jesse admitted, adrenaline still coursing through him. Colt reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "I'm proud of you." That took courage. Jesse felt warmth spread through his chest, pride mixing with relief. They had faced down the gossip together, and he hadn't crumbled, hadn't run. He had stood his ground and claimed his place. Maybe he was stronger than he thought. That evening, they celebrated quietly, whiskey on the porch, the satisfaction of a battle faced, if not won, at least not lost. Jesse sat between them, their shoulders touching his, and felt something settle deep in his bones. This was his life now. These men, this land, this strange, unconventional family they were building. The world might not understand it, might judge and condemn, but they had each other. And they had the truth of what they felt, and that was enough. As the stars emerged, ancient and indifferent, Jesse Caldwell finally let himself believe it. He was home. He was wanted. He was exactly where he belonged, and nothing, not gossip or law or prejudice, would take that away. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is not fighting, but simply refusing to hide, refusing to be ashamed of who you are and who you love. In the harsh western frontier, where survival depended on strength and conformity, three souls dared to build something different, something honest, something real. Thank you for being here tonight. If this story of courage and defiance has touched your heart, subscribe to my channel so we can sit together again tomorrow, and I will share another tale from the Wild West, where lost souls found each other in the dust and wind. The months that followed brought both challenges and unexpected joys. Summer gave way to autumn, and the ranch prepared for the harder seasons ahead. Jesse worked alongside the twins, his body growing stronger, his confidence deepening. But more than that, the connection between the three of them evolved, becoming something none of them had quite anticipated. One crisp October morning, Jesse woke to find frost on the windows and Ryder already gone from the house. He dressed quickly and found Colt in the kitchen, worry creasing his brow. Ryder went up to check the northern herd at first light. Colt said, "Should have been back by now." Jesse felt concern spike through him. "Want me to ride up?" Colt shook his head. "We'll go together. Saddle the horses while I pack supplies." They rode out into the cold morning, breath misting in the air, the landscape painted in shades of gold and amber. The trail to the northern grazing land was rough, winding through rocky terrain that required careful navigation. As they climbed higher, Jesse's unease grew. They found Ryder near the spring, his horse grazing nearby, but Ryder himself was sitting on the ground, his face pale, left arm cradled against his chest. Jesse's heart lurched as they dismounted and hurried over. "What happened?" Colt demanded, his voice tight with controlled fear. "Horse spooked at a rattler," Ryder said through gritted teeth. "Threw me into the rocks. Think my shoulder's dislocated." Colt knelt beside him, hands gentle but efficient as he assessed the injury. Jesse hovered close, feeling helpless. "We need to get you back to the house. Need to pop it back in first," Ryder said. "Can't ride like this." Colt and Ryder exchanged a look, some silent communication passing between them. Then Colt nodded grimly. "All right, Jesse, come hold him steady." Jesse moved behind Ryder, bracing him as Colt positioned himself. "This is going to hurt," Colt warned. "Just do it," Ryder grunted. What followed was brief, but brutal. Ryder's strangled cry of pain cut through Jesse like a blade, and he held on tighter, murmuring reassurances even as his own hands shook. When Colt finally got the shoulder back in place, Ryder sagged against Jesse, breathing hard. "Easy," Jesse said softly, supporting Ryder's weight. "You're all right. We've got you." They fashioned a sling from a bandana and helped Ryder onto his horse. The ride back was slow and careful, Jesse riding close beside Ryder, watching for any signs he might pass out. Colt led the way, his shoulders tense with worry he would never voice aloud. Back at the ranch, they got Ryder settled on the couch, Jesse fetching water and blankets, while Colt sent one of the hands to town for the doctor. Then they waited, Jesse sitting on the floor beside the couch, his hand resting on Ryder's good arm, while Colt paced like a caged wolf. "Stop fussing, both of you," Ryder said, but his voice lacked its usual strength. "I'm fine." "You're not fine," Jesse said firmly. "You're hurt. Let us take care of you." Ryder's eyes found his, something vulnerable flickering there. Not used to being the one who needs taking care of. "We'll get used to it," Colt said gruffly, dropping into a chair. "Because you're stuck with us, and we're not leaving you to suffer alone." When the doctor finally arrived, he confirmed what they already suspected. Dislocated shoulder, now back in place, but Ryder would need to rest it for several weeks. No heavy work. No riding. Ryder argued, but Colt shut him down with a look. "Your pride ain't worth permanent damage," Colt said. "Jesse and I can handle the ranch. You're going to rest and heal." That evening, after the doctor left and Ryder was dosed with laudanum for the pain, Jesse found himself alone with Colt in the kitchen. The older man was staring out the window, his jaw clenched tight. "He'll be all right," Jesse said quietly. Colt nodded but didn't turn around. "I know. It's just..." His hands gripped the edge of the counter. "When I saw him on the ground like that, hurt, I realized how much I have to lose now. Used to be just me and Ryder, and we could take risks because we only had each other. But now, there's you, and it's different. The stakes are higher." Jesse moved to stand beside him. "Is that a bad thing?" Colt finally looked at him. "No, but it's terrifying." Jesse understood. He felt it too. The weight of caring so deeply for someone that their pain became your pain. "It's worth it, though," he said. "Being terrified because you love someone, that's better than being safe and alone." Colt's hand found his, squeezing tight. "When did you get so wise?" "Had good teachers," Jesse said, with a small smile. Over the following weeks, as Ryder healed, Jesse learned new dimensions of their relationship. He and Colt managed the ranch work together, their partnership strengthening through shared labor and mutual reliance. But evenings were spent caring for Ryder, keeping him entertained while he chafed at the forced inactivity. Jesse found himself reading aloud from the newspapers and novels Colt brought from town, his voice filling the quiet evenings. Ryder would lie on the couch, his eyes closed, listening, and sometimes Jesse would catch Colt watching them both with an expression of such tender contentment it made his heart ache. One night, after Jesse finished a chapter, Ryder spoke into the comfortable silence. "I love you, both of you." The words hung in the air, simple but profound. Jesse's breath caught. Colt set down the account book he'd been reviewing, his eyes finding Ryder's. "Been waiting for you to say it first," Colt said quietly. "Love you too." His gaze shifted to Jesse. "Both of you." Jesse felt tears prick his eyes. "Nobody's ever said that to me before. Not like this. Not and meant it." "We mean it," Ryder said. "You're ours, Jesse. Completely. Forever, if you'll have us." Jesse crossed the room and knelt beside the couch, taking Ryder's good hand in both of his. "I love you too," he whispered. "Both of you. I didn't know I could feel like this. Didn't know I was allowed to. But I do, and I am. And I'm not going to run from it." Colt joined them, his hand resting on Jesse's shoulder. "Then it's settled. We're a family. Whatever comes, we face it together." That night, they moved Ryder carefully upstairs, and the three of them crowded into Colt's big bed. It was cramped and awkward with Ryder's injured shoulder, but none of them wanted to be apart. They lay tangled together in the darkness, hands clasped, hearts open, having finally spoken the truth they'd all been dancing around. As autumn deepened into early winter, Ryder healed and Jesse continued to grow into his role. The ranch hands had long since accepted his presence, his authority. In town, people still whispered, but the whispers had less power now. The Maddox Ranch was prosperous, well-run, and Jesse was clearly a legitimate partner, not just in name, but in function. One December afternoon, Jesse was in town picking up supplies when he overheard a conversation in the feed store. Two men were talking, not bothering to lower their voices. "Unnatural, that's what it is," one said. "Three men living like that under one roof." The other man snorted. "You mean two men, and that boy they've corrupted." Jesse felt the old shame try to rise up, but something else rose faster. Anger. He turned to face them, his voice cutting across the store. "That boy you're talking about, that's me. Jesse Caldwell. Legal partner in the Maddox Ranch. And I'm standing right here, so if you've got something to say it to my face." The men startled, clearly not expecting confrontation. The first one blustered. "We're just saying what everyone thinks. Everyone thinks what they're told to think," Jesse said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "But here are the facts. The Maddox Ranch is one of the most successful operations in 3 counties. We employ 15 men, pay fair wages, conduct honest business. We contribute to the local economy and follow the law. What we do in private, how we choose to live, that ain't affecting you or anyone else." The store had gone silent, everyone watching. Jesse continued, his voice gaining strength. "You want to talk about unnatural? How about men beating their wives, or cheating their business partners, or drinking themselves stupid while their children go hungry? I've seen all that in this town, and nobody seems too concerned about it. But 3 people caring for each other, protecting each other, building something together, that's what gets you upset?" He picked up his supplies and turned toward the door, then paused and looked back. "The Maddox brothers gave me a home when I had nothing. They gave me purpose, respect, and a future. So whatever you think about how we live, just know that I'm not ashamed, and I'm not going anywhere." He walked out with his head high, aware that word of his speech would spread through town within hours. When he got back to the ranch and told Colt and Ryder what had happened, he expected concern. Instead, Ryder laughed and pulled him into a one-armed hug. "That's my boy," he said proudly, "standing up for what's right." Colt's eyes gleamed with approval. "You're not that scared kid anymore, Jesse. You've become someone strong, someone to be reckoned with." "I learned from the best," Jesse said. That evening, as they sat around the fireplace, Jesse reflected on how far he'd come. Less than a year ago, he'd been running, terrified and alone, believing he was broken and wrong. Now he was here, surrounded by love and acceptance, having found the courage to stand up not just for himself, but for the life they'd built together. As Christmas approached, they decorated the house together, and Jesse felt a peace he'd never known during the holidays before. No more pretending, no more hiding, just 3 people celebrating together, their chosen family complete. On Christmas morning, Colt handed Jesse a small package. Inside was a silver pocket watch, engraved with the ranch brand and the words, "To Jesse, who made our house a home." Jesse held it carefully, overwhelmed. It's beautiful. Ryder's gift was a new saddle, custom made to fit Jesse perfectly. "For your horse," Ryder said, "since you're going to be riding these lands for a long time to come." Jesse's own gifts were simpler, gloves he'd sewn himself for the cold months ahead, one pair for each of them. But the twins wore them with pride, and Jesse knew it wasn't the expense that mattered, but the thought, the care, the love behind the gesture. As they sat together that evening, full from Christmas dinner, Jesse thought about the title he'd overheard someone use in town, the Three Cowboys of Broken Creek. It was meant as an insult, but Jesse wore it with pride. They were three cowboys, building something against all odds, refusing to let the world dictate how they loved. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent, covering the harsh land in gentle white. And inside, three men sat close together, hands clasped, facing whatever the future held as one. Because that's what family does. They stand together. They protect each other. They love without shame and build without fear. And sometimes, in the process, they change not just their own lives, but the very definition of what family can be. Thank you for being here tonight. If this story has moved your heart, if you see yourself in these characters fighting for the right to love and be loved, then subscribe to this channel. Tomorrow we'll sit together again, and I'll share another tale from the Wild West, where courage meant more than gunfights and justice meant standing up for truth, no matter the cost.